Is it really possible to take your whole family to Hawaii without blowing the budget? Or what about how many islands can you realistically visit in 1 week? Well, in this episode, you'll discover the top 10 questions listeners of this podcast are asking right now about planning a Hawaii vacation. Aloha and welcome to Hawaii's Best, the podcast helping travelers plan an unforgettable Hawaii vacation with insider tips and featuring local voices. I'm Brian Murphy, a husband, dad of 3, and certified Hawaii destination expert. Each week, I share local insights, travel tips, and up-to-date news, sometimes with guests across Hawaii and sometimes solo, all to help you plan your next trip to Hawaii. Welcome to episode 173. Today's episode is a little unique. We're doing something a little bit special. It's a full listener Q&A. Really, it's about if you've ever started planning a trip to Hawaii and you felt overwhelmed, you're definitely not alone. And everything between airfare, figuring out which island is best for families, which island are best for couples, honeymoons, and even questions like, do you need a passport to visit? Yes, that is a question that a lot of people ask. It can feel like there's a lot and just so much to sort through. A lot of these questions can be, and some of them I've done full episodes on, and I'll reference that as we go along, but a lot of these can be full episodes, but I wanted to give you concise, actionable answers to these top 10 questions. And some of the questions that we'll cover today, are how far in advance should you book airfare to Hawaii, for the best price? And can a family of 6 really take a Hawaii trip for under $5,000? Also talk about which hotels actually have kid-friendly pools that don't feel like a crowded theme park. Also talk about some recent news about the Alaska-Hawaiian merger and what that means for routes like Boston to Honolulu. So by this episode, you'll walk away with straightforward answers you can trust, so planning your Hawaii trip feels less stressful and a lot more exciting, as it should be. All right, question number 1. How far in advance should you book airfare to Hawaii for the best price? When it comes to booking flights to Hawaii, timing really does matter. And according to Expedia's 2025 Air Hacks report, the best fares usually appear 1 to 3 months before your trip. And for domestic flights, Sundays tend to be the cheapest day to book, and Saturdays are often the cheapest days to fly. I kind of disagree a bit with this report because from my personal experience, I have found that flying on a Tuesday or Wednesday seem to be the cheapest day. And also booking 1 to 3 months out is pretty tight. When you come across these reports like Expedia, it's important to kind of take it with a grain of salt. From my experience from traveling Hawaii some 30 times or so, I usually start looking about 6 to 9 months prior to flying. Now, keep in mind, we're in Southern California, so there's quite a few options as far as direct flights to Hawaii. About 6 to 9 months out, I start looking. Then I start looking at different times of day, meaning sometimes right before I go to bed, that's usually the time that it's cheapest, is in the evenings. I always make sure I clear my browser's history, cookies, things like that. So I'm searching on incognito mode on Google, and that's usually when I find the cheapest flights. So about 6 months out, I see what the options are, and I go ahead and start tracking. Nothing scientifically, maybe I should write it down, but just kind of tracking in my head about the costs. And then I start tracking it in the next few weeks. And I kind of already know what a low price is. For example, if you're booking on Hawaiian Airlines miles, well, now Alaska Airlines, they're merging, as you know, but a 17,500 mile flight on points is pretty cheap. So when I know I see that number or around that number, I usually pop on it and I go ahead and book. Now, holidays are the exception for sure. Google's travel data shows that the lowest fares for Christmas trips tend to show up around 71 days out, with the broader sweet spot ranging between 54 to 78 days before your departure. So that means if you're planning a big family holiday trip, you'll want to secure tickets earlier rather than later. A pro tip is, start tracking fares with Google Flights. I've done this before. It starts to get a little bit overwhelming with all the notifications, but you do get a good report on where the current price trends are. Okay, that was longer than I wanted it to be, and maybe I should do a whole episode on that, but the other questions will go a lot quicker. So question number 2, which Hawaiian islands offer the best mix of kid-friendly activities and family accommodations? So really the truth depends on what kind of vacation you're looking for. So on Oahu, you'll find the most variety and the easiest logistics. So there are dozens of life-guarded beaches plus protected lagoons like Ko'olina, where we often stay. That's perfect for young families. It's a great multi-generational area to stay on Oahu. If you're looking for a quieter, laid-back experience, Kauai is a strong choice for that. Lidgay Beach Park has rock-walled ocean pools that make swimming a bit safer for kids, and the island as a whole has a slower pace. If you're looking for a more resort-style trip, the Kohala Coast on the island of Hawaii, the Big Island, is really hard to beat. We stayed there a couple years ago at the Marriott up there, and it is such a beautiful area. The resorts here often sit on sheltered coves with easy water entry, and one tip would be pick an island to use as your home base. So match the island's vibe to your kids' ages and energy levels so the trip feels more smooth and enjoyable for everyone. But if you're visiting Hawaii for the very first time as a family, I would definitely recommend looking into Oahu. It's going to probably feel a bit more like home, and it also has a great variety of things to do on Oahu. It's going to feel kind of suburban in some areas, and it's going to feel country, like up on the North Shore a little bit. So you kind of get all of Hawaii, and the east side of Oahu is just so beautiful. So I would definitely recommend Oahu. The only thing about Oahu is just don't get stuck in Waikiki. If you're going to stay in Waikiki, make it a point to get out of Waikiki, especially during your time on the island. Question number 3, is staying in a condo and cooking meals really cheaper than staying in a hotel? So a lot of families assume that renting a condo and cooking meals automatically saves money, but the numbers definitely tell a different story. And according to the Hawaii Tourism Authority's 2025 report, the average nightly rate for a hotel runs between $370 US and $382, while vacation rentals average between $358 and $371. So the base price per night is actually pretty close. Where you can save with a condo is in your meals. Resort dining definitely adds up quickly, especially for a family, and the ability to cook breakfast and some dinners at home, such as a condo, definitely makes the difference. But don't forget to add in the extra costs that vacation rentals often include. Taxes in Hawaii can run about 17 to 18%, and many condos tack on significant cleaning fees that hotels don't. So a tip would be always run the math, compare nightly rate and the taxes and cleaning fees, and then factor in how much you'll actually save by eating in. That's really the only way to know if a condo truly comes out cheaper for your trip. And I can guarantee you, once you arrive in Hawaii, doesn't matter which island, you're going to want to eat some of the amazing food there. What we typically do is we eat our breakfasts in, and then what we do is sometimes we'll do an out for lunch, but typically we'll do out for dinner. Maybe we might make a sandwich or something for lunch, but we typically do our outs for dinner. Question number 4, do we need a passport to visit Hawaii, or is that only for international travel? This question actually trips up a lot of first-time travelers to Hawaii, and since Hawaii is technically a U.S. state, U.S. citizens do not need a passport to travel to Hawaii. All you need is a valid identification, just as you would for any domestic flight anywhere else in the country. So as you may or may not know, on May 7th of 2025, the TSA now requires travelers 18 and older to present a real ID, compliant driver's license, or another accepted form of ID, such as a passport. Minors under 18 don't need identification if they're traveling with adults. So a tip would be to double check your state's real ID status before you fly. And if your license doesn't have the star marking, you want to either update your license or travel with another accepted form of ID, such as a passport, to avoid any last-minute stress at the airport. All right, question number 5. Can a family of 6 really do a trip to Hawaii on around a $5,000 budget, or is that just wishful thinking? I just want to pop in here and say if you found any value in listening to Hawaii's Best is to simply follow the podcast on the app you're using right now. If you're on Apple Podcasts, just tap that little follow button in the top right corner. It's that easy, and doing so helps more people like you who love Hawaii find the show. And now back to the episode. Okay, so I might get some hate on this one, but really the short answer is yes. But it depends on where you're flying from and how disciplined you are with your budget. For example, eating out and maybe getting some souvenirs. But families traveling from the West Coast have the best shot to stay under the $5,000 mark. Round-trip flights can run between $300 and $400 per person if booked at the right time. So that means for 6 people, that's roughly $1,800 to $2,700 of your budget on accommodations. Condos or vacation rentals in a family-friendly area often costs $275 to $325 per night. So over a week, that adds up to around $2,000. That leaves the rest of your $5,000 budget for meals, a rental car. Yes, you definitely want to get a rental car, especially on any of the neighboring islands. Oahu, you might be able to get away without a rental car if you're staying in Waikiki, but you're probably going to want to at least do a rental car for a day or two if you're staying in Waikiki so you can get out of Waikiki. But if you're staying on Kauai, Maui, Big Island, you're definitely going to need a rental car. Families coming from the East Coast face higher fare, sometimes double the cost, which makes it harder to hit that $5,000 target without making huge sacrifices. So a tip would be to make this budget work, keep your trip to one island. So don't do any island hopping. Aim for shoulder season, so traveling in either spring or fall. And you're going to want to cook most of your breakfasts and dinners instead of eating out. I will say, backing up a little bit, I have been noticing that the airfare has gone up. I don't know if that's just what I'm seeing. I have seen a lot of people mention that since the Hawaiian-Alaska merger, seems like prices are a little bit higher, not as competitive. Not sure if that's going to be a trend. Hopefully things start to level off and come down. But obviously this is kind of peak travel season too. We're in mid-August here. So curious to see what happens come September, October. All right, question number 6. Which hotel has a great kids pool that's fun, but doesn't feel like a crowded water park? The good news is that there are several resorts across the islands that have this balance. On Oahu, our favorite place, I've mentioned it many times, Marriott Koleana Beach Club. That's where we pretty much always stay if we're on Oahu. They offer some great lagoon-style pools. There's a slide in one of them. There's protected beachfront areas that are fun for kids without being overwhelming. On Kauai, Koloa Landing Resort is highly rated for its multiple pools, including one designed with families in mind, but it doesn't have this chaos of a theme park setting. On the island of Hawaii, the Big Island, the Fairmont Orchid offers a calmer pool experience along with access to sheltered lagoon. That's perfect for young swimmers. One of our spots, where do we stay? On Maui, we really like the Westin. They recently, with the last couple of years, redid their pool, and it's great. So that's another kid-friendly spot if you're staying on Maui. But even the most family-friendly resorts like Aulani, pools are busy midday, so plan swim time in the morning or late afternoon for a calmer experience. Question number 7, why is the Boston to Honolulu nonstop flight being canceled? And is that tied to the Alaska Hawaiian Airlines merger? It feels like they just started this route, the Boston Honolulu, I guess within the last 5 years. They've also got rid of a couple other routes. One that's close to me, they got rid of and are replacing it with an Alaska flight. I don't know if I'll do that, I might have to travel to LAX or to San Diego. But the Boston to Honolulu was the longest nonstop flight in the U.S., domestic flight. But this route is scheduled to end in November of this year, 2025. Hawaiian Airlines announced the change as part of what it calls network optimization, citing underperformance on the route. In plain terms, demand wasn't strong enough to keep it profitable, aka Alaska is pulling a lot of those large flights, the 787, and they are hubbing them at their Seattle port. Some of them have already began to get a new paint job, which is kind of a bummer. I'm not trying to get salty about the Alaska-Hawaiian Airlines merger. I feel like I am starting to get a little salty about it, but I knew that there's going to be changes made, but some of them I'm not that stoked on. It's said that this decision is not just a direct result of the Alaska-Hawaiian Airlines merger, and while the merger may eventually influence route decisions, which I think it already has, and we've already seen that, Hawaiian has made it clear that this particular cancellation was about financial performance and not merger requirements. Not sure about that, but that's okay. But the main thing is for families traveling from the East Coast, if you are, this means planning for a connection through West Coast hub like Los Angeles, San Francisco, or Seattle. So building that extra travel time will now be a part of the itinerary if you choose on flying Hawaiian Airlines. All right, question number 8. Is it okay to bring home lava rocks or shells, or is that disrespectful, or is it illegal? This is one of the most common questions visitors have, and the answer is really important. So removing lava rocks, sand, or any other natural items from Hawaii's beaches and parks is illegal in many places, especially in state and national parks. It is also considered deeply disrespectful in Hawaiian culture. Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes, is said to bring misfortune to those who take lava rocks from the islands, and park rangers often receive packages of rocks mailed back from visitors, hoping to reverse their bad luck. Whether you believe in Pele or not, the importance of it is being respectful to the land in Hawaii. Now, while shells aren't as strictly regulated, the respectful choice is to leave them in place. They play an important role in the ecosystem and can actually hold cultural significance. So leave the shells there as well. Really, I guess treat all of Hawaii like a national park. If you're familiar going to a national park, you know you're not supposed to remove anything from the park. So same thing visiting a place like Hawaii. Question 9, how many Hawaiian islands can you realistically visit in one trip? So I get it. It's tempting to want to see all of Hawaii in a single visit, but less is usually more, especially for your first time. The average visitor stay is around 9 days. Realistically, that means you can explore 1 to 2 islands comfortably. Traveling between the islands involves short flights, usually about 20 to 50 minutes in the air, but the airport process adds up, taking sometimes a half day each time you move. And if you only have a week, focus on one island. But if you have, 10 to 14 days, 2 islands can definitely work. That's what we usually do. If we're just doing a week in Hawaii, it's going to be on one island. But if we have about a 2-week stay or a week and a half, we usually do multiple islands. But more than that, you're likely to spend more time packing and transferring than actually enjoying your vacation when you do those travels, especially within a week. So a tip would be, pick the island that best matches your family's interests and go deep on that island and explore it rather than spreading yourself so thin across multiple islands. And finally, question number 10, how do you travel between islands in Hawaii? By ferry, by plane, by boat, by train, or by both? Inter-island travel in Hawaii is done almost entirely by plane. Hawaiian Airlines and Southwest both have the market on inter-island flights between the major islands, and Mokulele Airlines or smaller airports, which can be helpful if you're heading to less touristy heavy areas like Lanai. The most regularly scheduled ferry service is between Maui and Lanai, which takes about 45 minutes. There used to be a ferry between Maui and Molokai, but that no longer operates as of today. So a tip would be treat inter-island flights like you would your main flights from the continental U.S., the mainland. Book them early, especially during busy seasons, to lock in better times and prices. You'll be surprised by how just waiting an extra half hour can save you flights, because these inter-island flights run like bus schedules. So, for example, when we're booking over from Oahu to Kauai, we chose a later flight by half hour, and I think I saved around like 1,200 miles, which was pretty substantial by just waiting an extra half hour. So play around with that and watch that. All right. As we wrap up today's listener Q&A, here are the big takeaways. Planning a trip to Hawaii doesn't have to be so overwhelming. I hope you've realized that. And if you focus really on the essentials, booking flights at the right time can save your family hundreds. Choosing the right island and sticking to just one or two will make your vacation smoother and less stressful. And remembering cultural respect, like leaving lava rocks and shells where they belong, helps keep Hawaii's beauty and traditions intact for future generations. So if you found this Q&A format helpful, and if you liked it, I'd love to hear from you. You can just simply leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And don't forget, if you're looking for more tips and resources to plan your trip, head over to hawaiisbesttravel.com, and there you'll find our blog, past podcast episodes, and other tools to help you get the most out of your time in the islands without needing a travel agent. That's not needed in 2025. So make sure you hit follow on this podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And until next time, as always, live with aloha. Mahalo for listening to this episode of Hawaii's Best. To stay up to date on future episodes, hit follow on your podcast app. Hawaii's Best is a production of Shorebreak Media Group with editing by Easy Podcast Solutions and music courtesy of our friends Stick Figure.